You feel a strange numbness in your arm. It fades in less than a minute. You shrug it off and carry on. But this tiny moment, this flicker, might be your brain's way of begging for help. Every 40 seconds, someone in the US suffers a stroke, and most ignored the early sign. A sign that feels harmless, that vanishes. That's exactly why it's so deadly. Because when stroke gives a warning, it whispers. And if you miss that whisper, you may not get a second chance. What you feel and why you can't ignore it. You wake up one morning and something feels off. Your right hand tingles. It's hard to hold your coffee mug. You shake it off, literally. A few minutes later, it's gone, back to normal. But behind that brief moment was something serious. Your brain may have been trying to tell you, I'm not getting enough blood. The most common early sign of a stroke isn't pain. It isn't unconsciousness. It's a feeling, a strange, unexplainable sensation. Tingling or numbness in the face, arm, or leg, especially on one side. Weakness or heaviness in a limb. Slight slurring of your words. Sudden trouble balancing or walking. These symptoms might only last a few minutes. That's what makes them easy to dismiss. But what you're feeling is neurological. Something is interfering with your brain's ability to communicate with your body. This is not aging. This is not a pinched nerve. This is not dehydration. This is a red flag. Why one side? Because each side of the brain controls the opposite side of the body. If blood flow to the left side of your brain is interrupted, the right side of your body might feel off. That's why stroke symptoms often affect just one side. You may try to smile and realize one corner of your mouth won't move. You might raise both arms, and one drifts downward. You speak, but it doesn't sound right. These aren't dramatic events. They're subtle, but they are urgent. Here's what most people do. They wait. They assume it will pass, and often it does. That's the danger. Because even if the symptom disappears, the underlying problem hasn't. In fact, it's often the calm before the storm. Part 2. Inside the brain, what a stroke actually is. Let's break it down simply. Your brain runs on oxygen. It gets oxygen through blood. When that blood supply is blocked, even briefly, brain cells begin to die. There are two types of stroke. One, ischemic stroke, the most common type caused by a blood clot or fatty buildup that blocks a vessel. Two, hemorrhagic stroke, less common but more deadly. It happens when a vessel ruptures and bleeds into the brain. Both have the same result, brain damage. During an ischemic stroke, a clot lodges in an artery. This stops blood from reaching a section of the brain. That area starts to die in real time. In a hemorrhagic stroke, a burst vessel leaks blood into brain tissue. That bleeding creates pressure, damaging nearby cells and interrupting electrical signals. In both cases, the clock is ticking. How fast? Doctors estimate you lose about 2 million brain cells every minute during a stroke. 2 million every 60 seconds. That's why the phrase, "time is brain," is more than just a slogan. A delay of even 10 minutes can change everything. From walking independently to being wheelchair-bound. From holding a conversation to losing your speech. From living at home to long-term care. But let's dig deeper. When a clot forms, it can originate from different parts of the body, commonly from the heart in people with atrial fibrillation or from fatty plaques in the carotid arteries. Sometimes clots can form after surgeries or long periods of inactivity. Once that clot reaches the brain, it blocks a narrow vessel, cutting off the supply of oxygen. Brain tissue doesn't have reserves. It starts dying within minutes. And the aftermath? It depends on where the stroke occurs. If it hits the language center, usually on the left side of the brain, you might lose your ability to speak or understand words. If it strikes the area responsible for movement, you might lose control of one side of your body. If it involves the brainstem, the consequences can be fatal, as it controls breathing and heart rate. This is why strokes are unpredictable and devastating. They rob you of the abilities that make you who you are. And it all begins with a tiny blockage or a tiny burst. Part 3. TI, the stroke that goes away but shouldn't be ignored. TI stands for transient ischemic attack. Many call it a mini-stroke, but make no mistake, it's a major warning. A TI happens when the blood supply to part of the brain is blocked briefly, often just a few minutes. The symptoms mimic those of a full stroke: sudden numbness or weakness, difficulty speaking, trouble seeing or walking. But here's the difference. The blockage clears on its own, and symptoms resolve. That's exactly why so many people ignore it. They think, "It passed, I must be fine." But here's what most don't know. 1 in 3 people who suffer a TI will go on to have a full-blown stroke, and half of those strokes happen within just 48 hours. Think of a TI as a rehearsal. It's your body showing you exactly what a stroke would feel like without the permanent damage. But the stage is set, and the second act can strike at any time. So, what should you do if you think you've had a TI? Seek immediate emergency care. Don't wait for a regular appointment. Ask for brain imaging, preferably an MRI or CT scan, to detect signs of recent ischemia. Request a carotid ultrasound or echocardiogram to find the clot source. Follow up with a neurologist. And most importantly, begin secondary prevention. That might mean blood thinners to prevent future clots, statins to lower cholesterol, blood pressure medication, lifestyle changes. Don't underestimate a symptom just because it disappears. Your brain is giving you a preview of what's coming if you don't act, and next time you might not be so lucky. Part 4. Recognizing and reacting, the FAST protocol. When it comes to stroke, speed saves lives. That's why doctors use a simple acronym to help people remember the signs and take action. F. Face. Ask the person to smile. Does one side droop? A. Arms. Ask them to raise both arms. Does one drift downward? S. Speech. Ask them to say a simple sentence. Is it slurred or strange? T. Time. If you see any of these signs, it's time to call 911. There's a common mistake we must address: waiting for confirmation. People often hesitate to call 911 because they're unsure if what they're seeing really counts as a stroke. They say things like, "I don't want to overreact. Let's give it a few more minutes. I'll wait to see if it gets worse." But here's the truth. Overreacting won't hurt you. Waiting might kill you. Even if it turns out to be something less serious, it's always better to be evaluated and cleared than to delay treatment for an actual stroke. Remember, the most effective stroke treatments are time-limited. Once the window closes, there's no going back. Train your family to recognize the FAST signs. Practice them. Post them on your fridge. Because when the moment comes, you won't have time to Google. Part 5. Preventing the next stroke. What you can do today. Even if you've never had a stroke, prevention starts now. And if you've had a TIA, your risk is already high. The good news? Stroke is largely preventable, and small daily actions make a big difference. 1. Manage your blood pressure. 2. Check your blood sugar. 3. Quit smoking. 4. Get moving daily. 5. Ask about atrial fibrillation. Prevention isn't just about numbers, it's about habits. Make your meals colorful. Leafy greens, berries, fatty fish like salmon. Reduce salt. Limit processed foods. Monitor your cholesterol. Keep LDL, bad cholesterol, low, and HDL, good cholesterol, high. Sleep well. Chronic poor sleep is linked to higher stroke risk. Aim for 7 to 8 hours of uninterrupted rest. Manage stress. Chronic stress raises blood pressure and inflammation. Consider yoga, deep breathing, or just more time outside. Keep your mind active. Mental stimulation improves brain resilience. Read, learn, play games. And finally, keep showing up for your checkups. Many stroke risk factors are silent. Your future self will thank you. Part 6. Final word. Don't wait for the second chance. A stroke doesn't always begin with collapse. Sometimes it begins with a whisper, a flicker of numbness, a stuttered word, a drifting arm. Most people ignore that whisper. They wait, they rationalize, they hope it's nothing. And sometimes that wait costs everything. But now you know better. You know what to look for. You know what to do. You've learned the subtle signs that often come first, what a TIA really means, the importance of fast, the steps you can take to prevent it all. So here's your call to action. If you or someone you love shows a sign, even once, call 911. If you've had a strange episode that passed, see your doctor this week. If you're over 60, ask about your stroke risk at your next checkup. And share this message, because the next person to feel a tingle in their arm might be someone you love. But if they act, if they know, it might not be the beginning of a tragedy. It might be the moment everything changes. And they'll have you to thank.